We can go into the 9/11 stuff with Jesse.
Okay.
Because I think that there's also like Hillary in that, and just like all of the best of the best. No, Ellie Mae, stay in bed.
That's why I came in that door.
Yeah.
Your buddy's not here today?
No. We're gonna do 2 1-hour episodes.
Oh, is he not supposed to come? He's not reliable, is he?
Not so far. I love you.
I love you too. Anyways, I'll just stop.
2, 1, and here we blast off.
Good morning, and welcome to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
And I'm Brittany Brown.
Glad to have you aboard where we are getting real and getting down to the nitty-gritty of what's going on here locally in Savannah, as well as perhaps where you are.
Yes, and there's lots going on in Savannah, isn't there, Bill?
Oh boy, there really is. We have our mayor, Van Johnson. We want to wish him the very best and a quick recovery. He's been diagnosed with fortunately stage 1 prostate cancer. Ironically enough, during Prostate Cancer Awareness Month.
Yes. I think he was diagnosed in 2020. But he came out earlier this weekend and talked about his experience with that.
Been undergoing some treatment, and we certainly hope that he's going to make a full recovery. In the meantime, I think he's probably a great celebration because he's coming back from Washington after going up to celebrate the signing of the Anti-Inflation Act.
There is wow. I don't even know why. Number one, the celebration we're going to get to later, Bill. We're going to get to the celebrating later. And you can't make this stuff up. And I don't even know why he went up there. Why is that so important? It's not important to Savannians, I'll tell you that much.
He's some big Democrat, and they're looking for anybody of his ilk in the party to advance their agenda, shall we say.
Oh, so they're grooming him.
Yes, he's being groomed.
Oh, that's exciting to be groomed by the Democrat Party. So
yeah, it sure is.
Exciting stuff. And Port Wentworth, did you hear the story, Bill, about...
The city of Port Wentworth has had more problems. It's a community outside Savannah, for those of you who don't know, and it has had its share of all sorts of political issues for years. The police chief has resigned, and they hired a new police chief, and a fire chief, and they made one guy city manager after the city manager resigned, and that guy resigned 2 days later, and they've had all sorts of problems. And what's happened is because the Georgia port is growing so much in a place called Port Wentworth, the city has been kind of divided. So you have this new area of Port Wentworth and the old area of Port Wentworth, and getting around the city is just atrocious.
Well, I mean, the stuff going on in Port Wentworth is also atrocious. They just had a chairman of the zoning commission that was caught with child pornography and arrested. So I don't know how these people are getting into these offices. And it seems like we're seeing this more frequently, Bill.
Well, and what I don't understand is that don't people know that there is absolutely no such thing as privacy anymore? You are going, it's like playing Russian roulette. Sooner or later, the gun goes off.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to get caught.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy did, and now Port Wentworth is now in a situation where they're talking about how they're going to redo their board.
So we'd like your suggestions.
Yes. And if you're in Port Wentworth and you have more information on this, we'd love to hear from you.
We would. And also, the city of Savannah has decided that they don't want any more traffic deaths by the year 2027. We average 22 traffic deaths a year, pedestrian deaths of people trying to cross the street and don't make it.
Well, Bill, I will tell you, when I moved to Savannah, I was told the rules of Savannah. This is Slovana.
Slovana.
And even if the light's green, pedestrians always have the right of way. So I think that as long as everyone plays by those rules, I think that we can assure you that there will be less pedestrian deaths. However, I will say, how much money is going to be spent on this initiative, especially, there are a lot of big things going on in Savannah, and these are called accidents for a reason. People are not intentionally hitting someone with their car, but the pedestrian deaths being at 22, which is way too many, but it's not as big of a number as I would have anticipated with the focus they're putting on it.
But they're putting it by 2027. They say they want no more traffic deaths, and I don't know how you can pass legislation that says we're not going to kill anybody on the street anymore, even by accident. But one of the things that they are looking at, they're applying for grants, federal grants, of course, to improve crosswalks and things of that day. We've done a lot to improve crosswalks over the last few years, where when you come to, right, especially around our iconic Forsyth Park, you have a pedestrian crossing lane, and there's a little button that you can press, and it lights up these caution lights to warn motorists that there are going to be pedestrians crossing the street. We tried something like this also downtown a few years ago that I thought was really cool. The lights are actually in the street itself,
Oh, really?
and so you could see these lights light up along the street. It was very easy to see people walking around, and for whatever, I don't know, people were complaining about that, and I don't know why. I said this looks. They only lasted about 6 months before they took them out.
Oh,
And
interesting.
so I don't know why they were wasting all that money. First of all, putting them in, which had to cost tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then what did it take to take them out? Just apropos nothing. I don't know who's in charge of city streets as far as residential areas, but the street where I live a few months ago, they got repaved. Didn't really need it, but it was kind of getting a little ragged.
Okay.
But they did a great job. 2 days later, they come back and we wake up and there are two yellow lines in the middle of the street. Why we need it? This is a residential street that hardly goes a quarter of a mile, and they've got these two yellow. Now that paint ain't cheap. This is that stuff that's $100 a gallon or
Yeah,
something.
it's reflective,
It's
yeah.
reflective type paint. So why we needed two yellow lines on a residential street where the speed limit's 25 miles an hour, I have no idea. But okay, fine. Then about 10 o'clock one night, a few weeks later, we hear this. The heck is that? Look outside. Now remember, this is 10:30 at night. We see two guys out with this grinder in the middle of the street, grinding up the stripes.
What?
They're grinding up the stripes.
Why?
I don't know. I haven't been able to find out yet. But you can, of course, now the middle of the street looks like it's got these little ruts in it where the stripes were, and you can still see the stripes. Now, how much did that cost? Because if it's 10:30 at night, you figure these guys must have been getting
Overtime.
at least overtime, if not double overtime, to be out there at that time of night. If people were trying to sleep at 10:30 at night, I wouldn't know what that's like, but still, you hear this grinder thing is going down this. So how much did that cost? Why not? First of all, why were the stripes painted in the first place? But why wouldn't you leave them afterward? I don't know if somebody complained or whatever it was, but forget it. Just leave it alone. Let the stripes, wear out, because the street will be repaved within the next 10 years.
I know. Well, that's just so random. And why?
I-
Okay, we painted it. We probably shouldn't have, but it's not a big deal. Moving on. We don't need to waste any more money on this.
Now, they did
I think
put up-
that's a big issue with the government. They love to just spend money to spend money.
Yeah, I do want to compliment the city on one point. They put up new street signs about a year or so ago, and they misspelled our street name. So I called, and within a few days, the new signs were up with the street name spelled correctly.
Oh, that's good. That is really good.
We always get it's always misspelled when people writing us, because it sounds like two words. It isn't. It's one word.
Okay.
But people try to separate it into two words, and that's what they did with the city street sign.
Interesting.
But thank you that they got that taken care of.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I'm surprised that they acted that fast. Usually, it takes a lot of time to get stuff done around here.
So
Bill.
if you want to volunteer for this committee that they're putting together to not have any more street deaths by 2027, how do How do you
Hold
even say that?
I have no idea. Why are they not focusing on the crime that we have here? We're having more people killed with that than the pedestrians. Like I acknowledge that them focusing on anything is a good thing. I am very curious why they chose the pedestrian deaths rather than the crime that we're facing here. Bill, it doesn't make sense to me.
I think the Chamber of Commerce came out with, we got bumper stickers that say we weren't shooting at you. So just to hand out to the tourists.
Are they going to just say, oh, sorry about that, our mistake, or what?
Yeah,
I don't know.
Oops-a-daisy.
Yeah. It makes no sense to me. The government, the city.
Something that does make sense. Recently, we're in the process of looking for a new police chief. So if you're in law enforcement, you're looking to become a chief of police of a nice city that actually appreciates its police and has even upped the ante on what we're starting salaries on, something like $50,000 to start. Then you can certainly apply for the job. But the interim chief, wonderful guy named Lenny Gunther, has reestablished what kind of a community policing type thing. They're doing a police roll call. They did the first one last night, and the Cloverdale community, which is an urban community and a very nice urban community. I mean, these people really keep this place well groomed. I got to hand it to them.
I love the idea of community policing. I think that that's what we need to get back to. I think when people know the officers and they're human beings, not just some guy that's coming after them with a gun, I think that you will see more positive results come out of some of these interactions.
I love what they did in Houston a few years ago, where they came out with baseball cards or football cards.
That's a cute idea.
The police officers to give to the kids.
I love that.
Trading cards. And it had all information about the cops, how many kids they had, and that sort of thing. It was really neat, and it was very successful. But they had their first roll call last night, and they're going to do it every Tuesday of the month, of this month. And the next one is in Windsor, in the Windsor Forest subdivision, and that's going to be at 5:30 next Tuesday, 1 week from yesterday.
Yes, and we will keep reminding you about that because I think it's important that the community shows up, gets involved, and we'll get you more information on where you can find the details for these moving forward.
It is a wonderful Wednesday. You're watching Get Real America. We're going to continue to get real next as we talk about
so many things, Bill. So many things. I think we're going to jump into maybe some domestic terrorism.
Yeah, it's your fault that things are so bad.
Today, we deliver for the people of Florida yet again.
You saved our jobs.
And kept us going.
They tried to shut us down, but you saved our business.
$1,000 bonuses.
You had our backs.
And honored our service.
You led by facts, not fear.
And you let us decide.
You let me go to school.
You gave me a voice.
You put us first.
And didn't let them keep us apart.
You let us learn.
You let us compete.
All of us.
You protected our right to worship together in person.
And you raised our pay.
You protected our waters.
And kept Florida beautiful.
When they attacked you, you didn't cave.
You stood strong for Florida.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Governor.
Gracias, Gobernador DeSantis.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis.
The last 3 years, Georgia's been tested in ways we could never imagine. And it fell to Governor Brian Kemp to successfully lead us during these troubling times. Georgia is still first in the nation for business. Our unemployment rate is the lowest in state history. Today, people come to Georgia to succeed, start a business, raise a family. Kemp has always backed the blue, stopping the radical left from defunding local police. He passed a tough new election integrity bill that, as the governor likes to say, made it easy to vote and hard to cheat. And while some during COVID-19 shut down their economy, Kemp kept our schools and businesses open while keeping Georgians safe. A long list of accomplishments. Fighting human trafficking, increasing teacher pay, greater access to quality health care. A governor who works for Georgians. All of us. Governor Brian Kemp.
Welcome back to Get Real America.
I'm Bill Edwards.
I'm Brittany Brown.
We're glad you're with us on this wonderful Wednesday. A little cooler here in Savannah. We got a cold front that's come through.
And it is wonderful, Bill.
Yeah.
It is wonderful.
Kind of feels like fall here this morning. Temperatures in the upper 60s, and we're only going to about the mid 80s. And for us this time of year, that's pretty darn good.
Yes, I love the weather right now. It is perfect. So if you have the ability to, go out and enjoy Savannah right now, because you will not be disappointed.
No, you won't. By the way, but before we get to anything else, continuing some of the local stuff, this happened in Effingham County, which is right next door to us. That multiple firearms were found in the vehicle of an Effingham County high school student. Now, it's one of these rural places where the kids grow up learning about firearms, going hunting when they're 8, 9, 10 years old. They know all about guns, and so this kid probably had been on a hunting trip, and they find this year the Effingham County folks are doing what we call a security sweep every once in a while, and so to make sure that the kids are safe at school. So they're going through the parking lot and they're looking in automobiles, and in this kid's car they find a AR-15 type style rifle, a Bushmaster, a Benelli 12 gauge shotgun. Those are nice. And also a para-ordnance 45 caliber pistol. So they talked to this young man and asked him what all this is doing in his car. He said, well, he just forgot they were there. He'd been on a dove hunting trip over the weekend, and that the other two weapons were for target practice. And that's it. That he's been charged with 3 counts of carrying a weapon in a school safety zone. I don't know what's going to become of that, but there was no threat. They've checked all the social media. He hadn't threatened anybody. He's a good kid apparently, no problems.
Well, and Bill, I think the thing that really bothers me is that because I grew up in the time when school shootings started to become a big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I lived in Utah when Columbine happened, and it scared a lot of people. It was the first real big shooting that we had in a school situation. And it was very evil, and it shouldn't have happened, but it did. And we've seen a lot of these happen over the last 10, 15 years. And I think, number one, the way media covers these, it has really impacted their ability to kind of continue to grow in popularity among these young people that are having maybe some mental health issues and think that this is their way to kind of end it all. So,
and by the way, Brittany, when you consider the common denominator of all these kids who are doing these shootings, there is one.
There's a few, actually, Bill.
Yeah.
A lot of them are taking these SSR1s that have been proven. There's been studies that have just come out that serotonin levels do not contribute to depression. So the pills that we've been giving people have created, a lot of problems for them, a lot of psychosis, a lot more depression, and things like that. And also the fact that they grow up in broken homes. That's another big contributing factor to these.
No daddy.
So when, Kamala Harris, this is called a root cause. I hope you're paying attention. These are things that we should be looking at when it comes to these. I don't think that we should be looking at the gun issue because, we're criminalizing a bunch of things that really are part of
Our culture.
Being free.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly. A free society.
Well, and I think that we've forgotten that, because someone does something bad doesn't mean we take away freedom from other people. And I think that, unfortunately, 9/11, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, is one of the catalysts for more freedoms being taken away. The Patriot Act is probably one of the worst pieces of legislation that went in that now takes away a lot of our rights that I will never experience in my lifetime unless we get some of this stuff redacted. But going through an airport, I'll never know what that's like without feeling like I'm a potential criminal or a potential threat to people flying on an airplane.
Typical overreaction that we do to just about everything, where all of a sudden everybody's a terrorist suspect, as opposed to going after the real terrorist suspects.
Exactly.
And this reminds me of a story that we actually did. This was over 20 years ago, when a young man at Jenkins High School here in Savannah, they found, I don't know how they found it. This is long before any of these security checks, but he was accused of he had a, pardon me, he was a Boy Scout.
Okay.
and he'd just come back from one of those scouting camporees. So in the trunk of his car, and in the trunk, found one of his Boy Scout hatchets and a Boy Scout knife. They suspended him. He was a member of the band. He was an honor member. He was going to honor band that summer. He came within an eyelash of not going to honor band because they had this hatchet in his car, and he'd just come back from a camping trip where they actually used hatchets and knives to cut things like trees and or branches off of bushes and things.
Well, and Bill, right before the show, we were talking about how things used to be. I mean, you said that everyone, and our producer started to jump in as well. People in your guys' age range, you guys, when you went to high school, you had racks of guns in your truck.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just part of life, right?
I went to Groves High School here, and it was in Garden City, which is a rural community. And we had a Future Farmers, an FFA, Future Farmers of America chapter, and a lot of kids came to school in their pickup trucks that had the gun racks in the back with the guns on them, and they went to they came in, drove right in, sometimes didn't even lock the truck. Nobody ever got shot. Guns were never stolen. No problems.
Well, and I also think that when we it's like putting up a sign, this is a gun-free zone. You're welcoming people that want to do a lot of damage into these buildings, saying, we have no way to defend ourselves. Welcome.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, most people are good. They're not there. They're not carrying a gun because they're trying to do harm to someone else.
Exactly.
But now that's the assumption. If you have a gun, you have an intention to do something bad. And I think that we demonize people that own guns, and I think that that's wrong. And we need to get back to a place where we're not punishing a whole population because of something that happened that one person did or two people did that's bad. And it's horrific what has happened with these public shootings. They've been terrible. But at the same time, if someone had a gun, would there be limited damage done?
And we just had the 21st anniversary of 9/11. And one would think that it would be a day where you wouldn't politicize the efforts. In fact, Republicans have been severely accused of politicizing 9/11 and called down by the Democrats. The shoe is suddenly on the other foot. Jesse Waters of Jesse Waters Prime Time on Fox gave an excellent juxtaposition on how we've transformed 9/11 into the attacks on January the 6th. Jesse?
The Biden White House used this day to politicize the worst terrorist attack in American history and declare war on you. Chuck Todd was a setup man and compared Republicans to terrorists, and Kamala Harris took the bait. Watch.
We're now, as a nation, battling a threat from within. Is the threat equal or greater than what we faced after 9/11?
There's an oath that we always take, which is to defend and uphold our Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And we don't compare the two in the oath, but we know they both can exist, and we must defend against it.
NBC News suggested Trump voters are a bigger threat than Al-Qaeda on 9/11. How did the Vice President of the United States respond? That she will defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. That was a declaration of war. Make no mistake, the Democratic Party, the media, and obviously the FBI have designated the Republican Party as a terrorist group and believe it's their patriotic duty as Americans to extinguish the threat. How exactly voting for Donald Trump is a threat? Well, how is that more dangerous than the 9/11 hijackers? ISIS terror cells plotting to blow up the Brooklyn Bridge. The Democrats won't call them Islamic terrorists, but if you voted for Donald Trump and have a personal grievance, you're a fascist. And Homeland Security's coming for you. This is how the Democrats explain it.
The stunning thing to me is here we are 20 years later, and the attack on the symbol of our democracy was not coming from terrorists, but it came from literally insurgents attacking the Capitol on January 6th.
How important it is to try to deal with extremism of any kind, especially when it uses violence to try to achieve political and ideological goals.
When 9/11 occurred in those years, we were very focused on the foreign terrorists. Now we are seeing an emerging threat, of course, over the last several years of the domestic violent extremist, an ideology of hate, anti-government sentiment, false narratives propagated on online platforms, even personal grievances.
That was the sitting U.S. Senator, a former Secretary of State, and the Secretary of Homeland Security just casually pivoting from 9/11 to January 6th. Did you guys notice how casual that was? They just said Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is Stephen Miller with a beard. I remember during the Bush years when Democrats would howl at Republicans for, quote, politicizing 9/11 because they wore a little flag pin. Now Democrats declared a war on terror against Republicans on the anniversary of 9/11. What makes you a terrorist again? Because you have personal grievances? Well, I have a personal grievance. Is that going to put me on a no-fly list? You're a terrorist for believing in false narratives? If I believe Hunter's laptop is real, am I going to Gitmo? And the big guy sounds like W, except the enemy is a red hat instead of a box cutter.
I will not wait on events while dangers gather. I will not stand by as peril draws closer and closer.
I will not stand by and watch. I will not stand by and watch elections in this country stolen by people who simply refuse to accept that they lost.
They embrace tyranny and death as a cause and a creed. We stand for a different choice.
MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies.
This is Biden's war on terror. He's straight up saying you're either with us or you're against us. When the Bush administration was spying on Muslims, raiding their homes and arresting them, the Democrats were up in arms, remember? What about the terrorist rights? Bush has gone too far. Now Biden's using Bush's war on terror language and tactics against Republicans, American citizens. But now Biden's prosecutors are reportedly negotiating a plea deal for the 9/11 terrorists held up at Gitmo, including mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed.
Wow.
That's just a little snippet of Jesse's show day before yesterday.
Yeah, and I mean, nothing makes me feel all warm and fuzzy just like seeing Hillary Clinton. It just makes me so happy.
Once again, from Rules for Radicals, you accuse the other side of what you're doing. When they consider January the 6th bad, and yet they don't say a single word about the fact that they never, if a Republican wins an election, it's rigged. If Democrats win, that was the way it was supposed to be. There hasn't been a single presidential election that they haven't questioned in the last 5 cycles.
Except the 2020, it was the most perfect, most.
Yes. Oh, the most integrity, the best
Couldn't
election
have been better,
ever. Couldn't have been. Yeah, absolutely could not have been better. And to ignore all of the riots that took place in over 500 cities, beautiful cities like Kenosha, Wisconsin, that were practically burned to the ground by mostly peaceful demonstrators. When you had the Communist News Network reporter standing outside of what looked like the Chicago fire, and he's saying, as you can see, it's mostly peaceful. Well, I don't know what parallel world these people live in, but it was anything but mostly peaceful. And when poor Kyle Rittenhouse actually had to defend himself against 3 Black Lives Matter people who happen to be white. Have you noticed most Black Lives Matter people are white?
They are. It's very interesting, Bill.
And he shoots and kills 2 of them, wounds a third, and if you did a survey of people around the country, if not the world, they said he shot black people.
Well, not only that, these people they're not the top end of society. The people that were killed, I mean, there was a pedophile in there. I mean, people that have been to jail, they're not the best of the best in America that are going to these riots and are participating in Antifa. So, and Antifa is just an idea, Bill. It's not really like a thing. It's just like an idea. So.
And have you noticed that Black Lives Matter only matter to those people if they're killed by the police? If every weekend in Chicago, we have like 48 shootings, and there's usually 17 to 20 deaths out of that. Every weekend, if not every week. And then, who else is a terrorist? When we come back.
We'll be talking about who else they're threatening right now.
Mm-hmm. And you might be ordering pillows from this guy. Or shoes.
My fellow Americans, it looks like some things have changed. Are we doing a good enough job teaching our children what America is and what she represents?
You want an abortion? Get one!
Younger parents aren't sure that an appreciation of America is the right thing to teach modern children.
We're not going to make America great again. It was never that great.
When I drive into a neighborhood and there are American flags, it's a message of white supremacy.
I'm warning of an eradication of the American memory that could result in an erosion of the American spirit.
We need to completely dismantle the police department.
If we forget what we did, we won't know who we are. We've got to do a better job of getting across that America is freedom, and freedom is special and rare. Freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom of enterprise. As long as we remember our first principle and believe in ourselves, the future will always be ours. Ours was the first revolution in the history of mankind that truly reversed the course of government, and with three little words: we the people. We the people are free. Once you begin a great movement, there's no telling where it'll end.
Welcome back.
This is Get Real America.
We are very excited to jump in today because I think we're all being labeled domestic terrorists.
Yes, we are, including the guy who wants to sell you pillows.
This is unbelievable. Take a look at this clip we have from last night.
Mm-hmm.
Today, the FBI, you're going to hear this, and you're probably already hearing it in the news. The FBI came after me and took my phone. They surrounded me at a Hardee's and took my phone that I run all my business, everything with. They could have just, what they've done is weaponize the FBI. It's disgusting. I don't have a computer. Everything I did up that phone, everything was on there, and they told me not to tell anybody. Here's an order, don't tell anybody. Okay, I won't. Well, I am. So, there you go. Today, the FBI.
Okay, we're good.
You're going to hear this.
Okay, that was Mike Lindell. In case you didn't recognize him,
Yeah.
He is quite a powerhouse in this election integrity movement.
He is, of course, had been introduced at Trump rallies and things of that nature. And, corporate America, please start growing a backbone again. He has been taken out of every major department store in America. They've taken all My Pillow products out of Walmart, Kohl's, Bed Bath & Beyond. I've gone to those customer service people and told them, I don't appreciate this. I know it's not your fault. Usually when you call, I worked in radio and television long enough to know that people call in to complain about a program or about what somebody said because they got offended. And the person who answers the phone is the one who starts catching hell. The person who answers the phone is the last person who can help you, okay? They're just there to answer the telephone and direct your call to whoever you want to talk to. But when you have so when I went to these consumer people and said, look, I'm not getting mad at you, but the fact that you've taken somebody's product out of this because you don't like their politics
that's un-American.
Yeah, it is the worst. I don't buy Slim Fast products because the Slim Fast CEO is a left-wing loon. And I found out what his politics were, so I don't buy them anymore. I don't go to Starbucks anymore.
I don't either, Bill. I don't go to Starbucks. I will not. Disney, I'm sorry, I've written them off. They will not get an ounce of my money ever. I mean, there's so many companies, but we vote with our dollars. That's a personal choice.
Exactly.
But we should have the option to buy products that we believe in and that we want to support. And lucky enough, he has had a lot of support from the conservative side, and we've been able to buy products directly from him. But it's still, it's still hurt his business.
By the way, he's been able to reduce those the prices of those products that we're selling. If you bought it like a pillow for like $70 or $90 at Bed Bath and Beyond, then you could buy it now for like $28 or something like, because he didn't have to go through all that middleman stuff and whole retail stuff.
Yeah. So Mike Lindell's very interesting. I think that people either love or hate him, but he has an amazing story. He was
one of the great American success stories that they couldn't have happened anywhere. Yeah, comeback stories, because I mean he was like a hopeless drug addict.
Yep, he was
at one point.
Yep, and then went through rehab, and has built this pillow business. Such an incredible story. If you haven't read his book, you should go check it out. It's amazing. But the thing about him is that he's been on the election integrity stuff. He actually, I believe it was 3 weeks ago, he kind of sent out a message saying, "Hey, everyone needs to." Go to their election officials and request the cast vote, which is the votes that were cast. That's why it's called a cast vote, and those records, because we should be able to see those based on doing an ORR request or a FOIA request. And it's blown up a lot of counties, and there's tons of people asking for these requests so that they can track what happened in 2020, which they don't want out there. So I'm wondering if this is related to that, and the fact that he, is supportive of President Trump, I think that also plays a role in them taking everything.
Yeah, and it bothers me, even as much as I was like Mike Pence as our vice president. I was hoping that Donald Trump would serve this term that he was actually reelected to, and then Pence would take over and be the president for the next 8 years. But he's one of those that says, let's keep moving forward. Let's don't look backward. Well, if we don't look backward to see what happened the last time, then it's going to happen again. That's why I think sometimes the Democrats feel very confident about keeping the House and the Senate, because they still think that the fix is in.
Well, I also think that Mike Pence, I was glad to see him with Donald Trump, because I think that they were a nice balance.
They were.
However, with the recent events and the fact that Pence has not been supportive of figuring out what's going on with elections, and the fact that he turned on President Trump, I have a really big issue with that. And he reminds me of the Republicans that don't support us. They're weak. They don't fight the battles that need to be fought, and that's why Republicans have won more elections, but we get less for it.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that, and it's because people are not willing to fight. And there's a reason that Democrats have lost less elections, but they're very aggressive in their policies.
Yeah, and they stand up for each other. They circle the wagons around the most. I mean, you look at Jerry the Nadler, Nattling Nabaum, that cretin, and also Adam Schiff, who he's lying when his lips are moving. You have Eric Swalwell sleeping with a communist Chinese spy, and yet he's on the National Security Council.
It's absolutely ridiculous. But I will say, Republicans, we do hold our own accountable. There have been plenty of people that we have said, you've got to go. You need to be out of office for the scandals that you're involved in. We don't want to be associated with that. And we are going to hold you accountable. Where the Democrats, they won't. They will not do that, which I don't respect.
And as we've got the saying that, if Donald Trump was actually did what they're accusing him of, he'd be a Democrat.
Absolutely. Absolutely. He might be Joe Biden. But anyways, back to Mike Lindell. I think that this is between 40 and 50 people that have been subpoenaed and raided by the FBI in the last week or so.
And have you noticed how they've done it, Brittany? It's one of these. It's all this drama, photo op type situation. They could have easily gone to these people's houses in private and said, "We're from the FBI. We wanted to check your phone."
And he was in Iowa on a hunting trip. And he had stopped at a Hardee's.
Yeah.
And the other thing that bothers me is that
how'd they know where he was?
Oh, come on, Bill. They're tracking all of us, let's be honest. But his phone was also connected to his hearing aids. So when they took his phone, now it impacts his ability to hear, and the fact that he runs. I didn't know that. Yeah. So 5 companies he runs off of the phone, and they're just like, sorry, you're going to have to give us your phone. No ifs, ands, or buts. I think that's how are they able to do this? And I want to know who is allowing all of these search warrants to be signed. What is going on in the government? And if you think that they're not going to weaponize this stuff against all of us, it's coming. So you better get out there and vote in this year.
We talk about the deep state all the time, and that's one of the things that President Trump had talked about when he was campaigning the first time. Was it going? We had the slogan was "Drain the swamp."
Mm-hmm.
Well, it goes back to the old saying that when you're up to your butt in alligators, it's hard to realize that your initial reaction was to drain the swamp. Your initial initiative was to drain the swamp, and that's what he found himself in, except up to his neck in alligators. When we find out just how bad this is, all these bureaucratic people behind the scenes that not elected, but have these jobs from which you cannot get fired no matter practically what you do. Most of them pay very, very well. These jobs pay anywhere from $70,000 up to six figures and beyond.
I mean, if you're Anthony Fauci, you make more than the president.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's over $400,000.
It's over $400,000. Yeah, he's the highest paid of our government officials.
And that doesn't include all of his other dealings that he has with pharmaceutical companies that have really benefited him over the years. So
it's interesting how that when we discovered a cure for COVID that only cost 50 cents and had been around for 80 years.
Safe and effective, I think, is some words that we could have used.
Hydroxychloroquine.
Mm-hmm.
It looked like it was, if you took it early. In fact, people were calling in Sean Hannity's radio show and said, I was at death's door when they started giving me this, and and then this guy recovered like within a week when he was in ICU, and they said, well, we can't have that.
Well, even
blood is on their hands.
It absolutely is, and even when you look at the monoclonal antibodies, they started to restrict them because Florida was using them heavily to make sure that people were getting through COVID. And then the government was like, the federal government was like, we're not supplying this to you anymore.
But the governor of New York puts people with COVID back in their in senior living homes and is responsible, they think, for over 24,000 deaths because of it. And he gets a $5 million book deal. Of course, we find out now that he didn't actually write that book, and he got a lot of his staffers to put that thing together for him, telling everybody what a great governor and leadership he was, and he actually had to resign.
Yeah, well, this is crimes against humanity, and we have got to take the House and the Senate back in 2022 so that we can get to the bottom of what actually happened. I mean, there is so much going on here, and I think that the American people have every right to know. We have every right to know what happened, where this virus came from, and why they didn't do the right thing. And the other thing that I think is really interesting is that, Cuomo actually was defending domestic terrorists like ourselves. He was saying not all Trump supporters are extremists. And he sent that out on Twitter, and I was very surprised to see that from him. But, kudos to him for actually standing up and saying something.
And by the way, New York, you were a lot better off with him, unfortunately, than you are with this cretin that's actually in charge now, Kathy Hochul. This woman is just is absolute witch.
So you guys should also get out and vote. And Zeldin, he's
Lee Zeldin's the man.
Yep.
Of course, they tried to kill him. At a rally recently, but they let the perpetrator go on his own recognizance within 24 hours.
Yeah, because, that's the way things work these days, Bill. We don't hold anyone criminally liable.
Imagine, and then Kathy Hochul comes out with some really, really lame thing like, that this, there shouldn't be attack on political people. And then her campaign puts out a agenda on where Zeldin is going to be campaigning, the times, the venues, and why was that?
She's a terrible human being, a terrible human being. And that's the other thing. People really need to look at people's actions and hold them accountable to what they're doing. And that means at the ballot box. I'm not saying to go after these people in any sort of violent way.
We can do it with ballots and not bullets.
Yes, but these people need to be taken out of office. They're crazy people.
Why would you vote for these people? The proof is in the pudding. Look at here at Georgia. Look at Florida. Look at South Carolina. All of our governors have kept the place open for the most part. Said you didn't have to wear masks. and just got all sorts of brickbats for it. But look how successful our states have been, as opposed to the blue states that have been completely shut down, and where you're running out of power, you're running out of, and the media's power to ignore. There's still a baby formula shortage. I don't know if you know that or not, because they haven't talked about it in a long time. They're not reporting on it. And we have ladies that are still saying, I have twins and I have to make a decision on which one I'm going to give the baby formula to, or whatever. I mean, it's
and this is awful. America. This is Biden's America.
Yeah, he didn't have a crystal ball, didn't see this coming. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you did see this coming. You were warned about it on numerous occasions.
Yeah, and I just want to also say that Kemp led the charge on opening up a state.
Yep.
So just keep that in mind as you're going to vote, because he did do the right thing. He opened us back up, and he also helped Savannah out a great deal, because we were able to take a lot of tourism away from other places because we were open and people want freedom.
They came here in droves.
Yes, they did.
Coming up next,
we're going to be able to see Rand Paul. He's one of my favorites, so excited to see that clip coming up.
Rand's on the way.
It's Independence Day, so let's talk about what's going on in America. Freedom is under attack in your state. Dictator Ron DeSantis incredibly lets you walk around without masks. That tyrant allows your kids to go to school during the pandemic, year 2 or 4, or who the hell knows. I urge you living in Florida to join the fight. Or join us in California, where we'll take the money you earn and give it to people who don't work. Visit San Francisco, where you can walk through human feces. If you're lucky, you might step on a syringe. Check out Los Angeles, where gas is so expensive, your kids only need to skip a meal or 2 or 10 to afford it. California, where freedom means lockdowns for you, while I go to the places you can't afford. Don't let them take your freedom. Come to California, where we'll take it, along with your money.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is your governor speaking. Today's training evolution, dogfighting, taking on the corporate media. The rules of engagement are as follows. Number 1, don't fire unless fired upon, but when they fire, you fire back with overwhelming force. Does it say that in the bill? I'm asking you to tell me what's in the bill. Number 2, never ever back down from a fight.
If I could complete the question, though.
So you're going to give a speech or ask a question? Number 3, don't accept their narrative. It's wrong. It's a fake narrative. I just disabused you of the narrative, and you don't care about the facts. It's why people don't trust people like you, because you peddle false narratives. All right, ladies and gentlemen.
Let's turn up.
Georgia's the worst, according to Stacey Abrams.
I am tired of hearing about being the best state in the country to do business when we are the worst state in the country to live. We are the worst state in the country to live.
Oh, bless her heart. Georgia leads the nation because Brian Kemp is governor. He reopened Georgia first, brought thousands of jobs, and Kemp's cut taxes to help families deal with Biden's inflation. Brian Kemp's kept Georgia the best place to live.
No one who is alive today had ever experienced a true pandemic. And I'm hoping that now that this is over, people are going to, recognize that some serious errors were made and not repeat those. That's the best you can get out of it.
So what do you tell those people?
Vote Republican. That's what a lot of them are going to do anyway.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, more than 1 million people transferred over to the Republican Party, I think, in 2021 alone. Find out what that number is.
You can't beat vote Republican coming from Joe Rogan.
Good advice.
I like it. Yeah. I like it a lot.
Yeah, if you don't vote for anybody with a D by their name, America will be a lot better off.
100% agreed. And we have one of my favorite senators, Rand Paul. I don't know how you feel about Rand Paul, but I actually really love him.
I'm out on the campaign trail, and a question he's not getting much.
Take a look at this.
Now is Kentucky Senator Rand Paul. Senator, great to see you tonight. I think that more than past elections, this one really is about common sense and the left's utter rejection of it. Do you agree?
Yeah, and the thing is there's an enormous disconnect between those in Washington and those on the ground. Like in Kentucky, we lost 40 people to severe flooding recently in eastern Kentucky. Hundreds of homes were lost, and I was just out there. Not one person said, can you please send more money to Ukraine? They said, how come we're a rich country and we're having trouble digging our ditches, repairing our roads, and all of the basic functions of government, and yet the politicians in Washington want to send another $13 billion. After they send this $13 billion, we'll have sent over $50 billion to Ukraine, and people in eastern Kentucky are saying, how come we can't repair our bridges? How come we can't repair our roads? And so I find nobody in Kentucky coming up and say, please send more of our money overseas. And yet in Washington, it's not just Democrats. You got Democrats and all the Republican leadership lining up and saying, please send more of our money to Ukraine. But I'm not hearing it at home at all.
Now, you talk about that disconnect, Senator, and today President Biden unveiled one of his new so-called accomplishments.
Made in America is no longer just a slogan. Earlier this year, I went to Lockheed's factory in Alabama. They're making the Javelin missile that we're supplying to Ukraine.
Senator, how does the production of Javelin missiles for Ukraine help Americans? I guess except the Americans at the factory, I guess.
Yeah, I've never really been big on looking at arms programs as jobs programs. I think that our weapons are uniquely owned by the taxpayer, even if private organizations make these. And when they shouldn't be something that's like, oh, well, let's give more weapons to create jobs by, getting involved in more wars overseas. No, we don't really have the money to do this. We're $30 trillion in the hole, and it's inflationary. You borrow more money to buy weapons, it also causes inflation. And so really what I hear still around Kentucky and around the U.S. is my gas costs so much, we can't go on vacation this year. The groceries cost so much. I'm a senior citizen. My check is getting thinner and thinner. I can't afford to do the things I want to do because of inflation. And they all instinctively know this is from the massive debts, the massive borrowing, and the huge COVID lockdowns and all the mistakes that were foisted upon us by Democrats, by Biden, by the Democrat Congress. And so I think there's a huge wave building. I really still think there's a huge wave building.
I do too.
Of discontent, and people are going to want to throw the bums out who have caused all this inflation.
Yeah, and everything's tightening. You see that with the Blake Masters race, 2 points or 3 points, the new Emerson poll, Fetterman in Pennsylvania. And you've got your own race in Tennessee, Senator, but you've got to help.
Okay, that was Rand Paul. He is one of my favorites, and I love how he's just so matter-of-fact about things, and everything is very straightforward. There's no wordplay there, which I totally like about Rand Paul.
Doesn't gill the lily. And by the way, I loved it when he was criticizing Tony Fauci and putting him on the hot seat because, and I remember one of the reporterettes from one state said, well, who made him a doctor? Somebody had to inform her that he is an ophthalmologist.
He actually is a doctor.
He is a real MD.
A little embarrassing for that person. Which is
not what Tony Fauci is. Meanwhile, speaking of ignorance in voting, or ignorance among the public, how is public education doing these days besides teaching transgenderism and telling little boys they ought to be little girls and little girls they ought to be little boys and that men can have babies?
I mean, I think it's going well, Bill. I think that people can answer questions on the street, which I think we have some footage of, which I found quite interesting.
Let's find out.
What country is the Queen of England from? Originally.
I definitely don't know.
No, give me your best guess. I guess a country.
What is a country again?
Give me a guess.
This is embarrassing. What is a country? What is a country? What is a country? Canada.
Yes. Do you know what time this is?
5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45. 2:45.
Yes. Do you know what country the Great Wall of China is in?
Country?
Yeah. If you had to guess.
Japanese.
Yes. Do you know what the third month of each year is?
Ain't that leap year or some shit?
Yeah. Do you know what 15% of 100 is?
Fuck.
Around what it is, if you had to guess.
Probably like 75. I don't know.
Yes. Do you know what country we gained our independence from?
Spain.
Yes. How many inches are in 2 feet?
I don't know.
Around how many inches? If you had to guess.
5.
Yes. Do you know what country the Panama Canal is in?
No.
If you had to guess, like what do you think it sounds like it's in? Guess a country.
Europe.
Yes. Can you name all the months?
September, January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August.
Yes. Do you know what country the Panama Canal is in?
Panama, Spain.
Yes. What do we call a shape with 5 sides?
Is it an octagon? Wait, that's 6. That's 8. Octagon is 8. Is it a stop sign?
Yes. Do you know what year the U.S. was founded?
Oh, no. I'm not even going to answer that.
Around when? If you had to guess a year.
I do not know.
Give me your best guess.
I'm going to say BC. I'm going to keep it at BC era.
Give me a number, BC.
Um, 18 something, 1800s.
BC?
Yeah.
Yes. How many weeks in a year?
Weeks in a year? I don't know. Can't count the weeks. 4 times 12, 24 weeks?
Yes. How many different moons does the Earth have?
4.
Yes. Do you know who fought in the Mexican-American War? You remember?
Can't lie to you. I don't know that.
Guess 2 countries. Who against who? If you had to guess.
Philippines?
Yeah, against who?
Oh my goodness. It was so hard to watch that, Bill. Public education at its finest.
And the horror, the most horrifying thing of this, I mean, you have to be laughing on the outside and crying on the inside. These people vote.
Very scary, Bill.
So when you wonder why these cretins get in office,
they're offered free stuff. These people believe them because they obviously don't know a lot and they don't understand how things work. So that's how we end up with a lot of people in office that shouldn't be.
how in God's name did AOC get reelected? The fact that she was elected in the first place, because she actually went out and campaigned, knocked on doors, and the guy who'd been there, for 20 years thought that he was, going to be there forever. Know that feeling. And so he didn't do much campaigning. She did and got elected, sounded good, the world's smartest bartender. But when she kept Amazon from coming into New York because they wanted to build a new distribution center, we actually put in a pitch for it here in Georgia. Macon was considered one of the spots that they might put the warehouse. I wish they had, but they decided to go to New Jersey, something like that. But she kept them out of New York, so because she said they were going to get it was going to cost them $2 billion. I think they were given this tax break. You wouldn't have to pay taxes for a number of years or something like that. Isn't that interesting? These people that say how important that taxing businesses are, and yet to attract them, they say you won't have to pay taxes for the first 10 years that you're in business, which is a blink of an eye in the business world.
Well, I think we can see how stuff is actually happening in this country, and it's because people are uneducated. They don't understand the way that things work, including the tax code. And these people are voting, and this was actually in New York. You could see Times Square in the background.
Sure.
So, I mean, some of those people could be voting for AOC. So, I mean, makes a lot of sense to me, Bill.
And some of them dressed like they were taking out the garbage. But at the same time, she's cost New York, and they even put up, I think they even put up banners around there, thanks for costing us 24,000 jobs, AOC, in a time when they really needed them. This was just coming out of the pandemic that they made up. And so why this wasn't a big deal in the election last time and kicking her out of office after only one term, I don't understand. But when you see the people that they just talked to, and that wasn't all of it. We thank Larry Elder, a great talk show host, posted that, and we were able to take advantage of it as well to show you that this wasn't staged. This is, quote, man on the street, person on the street, whatever you want to call it.
And he does a lot of these, actually, and there's another guy that does them as well. So maybe we can integrate those into our show so that you guys can understand what's going on in the public education and also how it's impacting voting and people in the workforce. I think that it's really important for us to understand that these people are not getting the education that they deserve. Therefore, we are not getting the leaders that we deserve. Therefore, we're not getting the country that we deserve.
We actually, we do. As the old saying goes, though, that you may not always get the government you want, but you'll always get the government you deserve. And that is when those of us who want a better government sit on our hands and say for some reason I'm going to stand on my principles, and I'm not going to vote because I don't like any of the candidates.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that. You need to get out and
cut
vote
off your
Republican.
nose to spite your face, okay?
Yeah, don't allow us to get something that's worse than what we have because you're upset about something that at this point in time you need to get over and get to work, and we can impact primaries the next time. But right now, I mean, we haven't had enough people jump in and get engaged, and we need that right now.
And if you don't, don't wake up Wednesday, November the 9th, and complain about what happened yesterday if you didn't vote.
Yeah, if you don't vote, you can't complain, and we get what we get. So I think for today that's going to wrap us, Bill, but
we're doing a little abbreviated session today. We appreciate you joining us. We'd like to hear your comments. We'd like to get your stories. We'd like to hear about the good things that are happening in your neck of the woods. And by all means, give us some examples of things that we ought to be covering that we're not.
Yes, and check us out on social media. We are on YouTube, Rumble, Vimeo. You can check us out on our website, granewsmedia.com. You can leave comments there as well.
Don't forget Spotify.
Spotify and Apple. I'm so proud of you for remembering that.
Yeah, me too. As soon as I find out what it is, I'm going to look it up too. So we'll